Hi guys, at the end of the sailing season I was looking for some jobs to do over the winter, and the handrails on my CNC 27 were in really bad shape. So I thought about sanding them back and revarnishing them, but as I detached them, one of them broke, and when I take a close look at them, they're really beyond salvage, I think. This is the one that I took off the boat, and to drill out the plugs, this one was so rotten it just kind of gave way. And as you look at this wood, it's really, really in bad shape. So figured I would just make a new one. If you notice, one of the challenges of this piece is that it's kind of beveled. It's not straight vertical on the sides. It's got a little bit of a bevel to it. And it has a curve, but I think it's acquired that curve after being for 40 years bolted down on the bolt. I have actually gone through this process already, and I've made the first handrail, but it took me quite a while to figure out how to do it and work with the tools that I do have. They're not the most accurate tools. They're not professional grade by any means. So I kind of figured it out, and I think I can show you the process that I used, and I'll show you the tools that I've been using as well. So if you're interested in how the first one turned out, I'll give you a look. So it's got 7 coats of varnish on it now. I'm not yet at the point of having drilled out the bolt holes to through bolt it to the cabin top. I'm hoping Santa brings me a drill press. Anyway, this is the finished product of the first one. So hopefully we can do the second one even a little bit better and streamline some mistakes. So the first trick was finding a piece of teak that was big enough. So I needed a 10-foot length, and I needed about, I think this one is about 7/4 thick, rough cut. You can see it's not finished, like it's just rough cut. And you can see that it has a pretty good warp in it as well, which I wasn't too worried about because there's enough flex in the finished product. I think I can force it into shape. So I was able to get basically three widths out of this. So I'm hoping the piece that's remaining is big enough to pull the finished piece out of. So for a 6-inch wide piece, it was about $320 Canadian for that piece of teak. So I really don't want to screw around and waste wood here. There is another guy who has a video on YouTube of making replacement handrails, but he's doing it in his buddy's professional wood shop, and I just don't have those kind of tools. I got some pretty basic tools that I'm using, and that means that the finished product isn't factory perfect, but it's pretty darn good. So like I mentioned, I'm just using homeowner tools. This is a belt sander that I've had probably for, I don't know, 30 years maybe. I bought it used off a rental shop. And I got a bunch of clamps, more over on the wall over there somewhere. Yeah, lots there. I've got a random orbital sander that I used, a very homeowner or DIY grade jigsaw with a rough cut wood blade in it. That's what I ended up having to use to rip the piece of the length of lumber. And they're all sitting on a real cheapo bench table saw, which isn't really good for cutting the full length of the wood. I had to use the jigsaw for it. It just couldn't handle that big dimension of wood. And I don't have a router table. I did have a router, so I just put a worktop on the table saw and made this kind of insert thing here to drop the router in. So those are basically the tools and some sandpaper that I've been using. So the piece that I'm using as a template is a piece I cut from the first one And when I cut it to a bevel, I did use a table saw for that, so I have this long, thin blank that I can use as a stencil to just mark this. I had to clamp it in place because the warp of the wood is going the opposite way, so I don't know, we'll see how it works out. You can probably think of lots of better ways to do this, I don't know. I'm kind of figuring it out as I go, and that's what half of what makes it fun. Okay, so I think it's marked out okay. There's a couple spots, I don't know if you can see here, but this one is very, very close. And same with this one, very, very close to thickness. So I really don't have a lot that I can sand away in that spot without losing the matching dimension. Now, they're on either side of the boat, so you're not gonna see them side by side. So if they're not a perfect mirror image, it's maybe acceptable. That one out. So the next step is going to be to use the jigsaw and rough out these handles. So we'll get the jigsaw fired up and we'll take those out. So again, not working with great tools here, so I've just got a belt sander clamped onto the bench, and if you can see with the speed square, it's pretty close to vertical. So I'm using that to shape out the wood. Okay, so it's been through the router now, so you can see it's not perfect, so there's some finish sanding to do, definitely. But not the worst. Starting to look like a handrail now. So definitely starting to take shape. As you'll look at these pieces here, the feet are starting to look kind of right. Little seams and stuff, just where the router bit over a bit slightly. Again, not a precise tool, so that's fine. A lot of this is done with sanding, a lot.